Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Julian's Discussion, and I'm your host, Zach Julian. Today, we're going to continue talking about the key races in the 2022 Senate midterm elections. We've already talked about Wisconsin, determined that there is no good way to make a projection on that until the Democratic primary happens on August 8th or 9th. Now we're going to talk about Georgia. Maybe even more important than Wisconsin is Georgia. If Republicans win in Georgia, they put a lot of pressure on Democrats to pick up either Pennsylvania or Wisconsin. And if Democrats win in Georgia, suddenly Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are must-wins for the Republicans if they want to just keep a tie in the Senate, which is, of course, being broken by Vice President Kamala Harris right now, so it's still a Democratic majority. So if Republicans truly want a majority, they need to win Georgia or Arizona. Arizona is another very possible flip back to Republican control. However, I believe that Georgia is the more likely one. But now getting into the race, this is going to be Herschel Walker representing the Republican side. Very Trump-based candidate, former football player, very popular within the state for that reason. And he is facing incumbent U.S. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock. Warnock, if you might know, won the 2020 runoff election just a few weeks before President Biden was inaugurated, early 2021. And him and Senator Jon Ossoff winning those races is what put politics on Capitol Hill to where they are today, with the split Senate and Georgia even being in play for Democrat control. Going to their presidential electoral history, it had been not since 1992 had Georgia went to the Democratic side, and even then it was only by 0.6 points. That's a very close race. Admittedly, it was even closer in this past election, 0.23%, and that was only roughly 12,000 votes, not even 12,000 votes actually, in the state of Georgia to decide that election. There's your daily reminder, every vote counts. However, that's the context for this race. That's why it's so important. Whoever wins this is put in a much better spot for the rest of the elections, which is what makes it important. And if Republicans win, of course, it gives them control of the Senate to help put along their agenda, whatever that may be, for the next 2 years until the next presidential election. So Georgia is, of course, very, very much a swing state now. However, polling is currently showing Reverend Warnock in the lead, but it's well within a margin of error. This is 270 to wins poll aggregate, and the average is pretty big. However, that is fueled in large part due to this outlier there, and as well as another 5% there. Everything else is pretty close. This is another exception, but that was made back in November of last year, almost a year after the original election. These are the two most important polls because it's the most recent ones and the ones that are included in the average. Georgia factors in this election are Georgians still mad at Trump? You have to remember, on election night in 2020, both then Senator Kelly Loeffler and then Senator David Perdue were both ahead in their given elections. However, neither of them hit the 50% mark required by Georgia law to win the election outright, which sent them both into a runoff election between the top two candidates, which were Jon Ossoff and David Perdue in the main race, and then Kelly Loeffler and Raphael Warnock in the special election. And that election is what we are talking about here. This is the map from 2016, how each party voted in the presidential election. And the key counties here are Fulton County, County, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, and Cobb County. That's Atlanta and the suburbs. Chatham County with Savannah is also a somewhat important county. However, Fulton, Cobb, DeKalb, Gwinnett, those are your main counties for this race. And even in 2016, they were all fairly Democratic. But Clayton plus 70 for Hillary, plus 40 for Hillary in Fulton County. But not a big gap in Cobb. However, going into the 2016 or 2020 race, this is the results in 2020. This is next up. I might show the change. Fulton County plus 46, but Cobb County went from a plus 2 gap for Hillary Clinton to plus 14. In large part, this was due to turnout. Voter turnout in the 2020 election in Georgia was massive and was one of the best places for voter turnout and was their best voter turnout in many years. In general, voter turnout in these bigger areas is, of course, going to lead to more people voting with the majority there. And that rate was able to outpace the gains that Trump was gaining from voter turnout in other parts of the state. However, without Trump on the ballot, the question becomes, will Democrats have the energy to get out and vote and defeat Herschel Walker? And this is seen by some as more of a test election for, does Trump still actually have political influence? It's been shown that he does. Herschel Walker was his endorsed candidate in the primary here. However, there has been very few tests of him at a statewide level. This is seen as one of the biggest ones. And going to the change of from 2016 in Georgia, this is so much blue. Every county changed blue, almost. I mean, there are exceptions, of course. Even most smaller areas shifted blue. Or at the very least, did not shift very much Democratic. So because of this is a race that is a must-win for both sides. And Herschel Walker here, he is a very, very controversial figure, but a very popular one at the start because of his football career. You can see his state Senate logo has that football insignia. But on the issues, he is very, very much the standard conservative. Georgians first, American first, small business, conservative values, secure the border. This is very much your typical conservative. Warnock, on the other hand, is more of not quite a true progressive Democrat, but he is one of the more progressive Democrats in the Senate right now. Now, going back to the polls to actually try to see what's going on here in Georgia. So, in general, this is actually a very important race. Georgia is very reflective of the country as a whole politically, and these candidates are very possibly very similar to who each party is going to put forward in the 2024 presidential elections. So, UNC polling here, it has, in the most recent polls, it has Senator Warnock keep maintaining his seat with likely voters. But that race is within the margin of error. It may as well be considered a tie with that Fabrizio Ward poll. However, going back 2 weeks before that with the Quinnipiac poll on June 29th, 1,500 registered voters, it has him winning, even considering margin of error, let's say 2.5 points on each side, by 5 points. Going back to the poll before that, it was considered a tie. Surveys USA's poll in late April, outside the margin of error. I mean, if you add that margin of error to both sides, it's within it. But all this goes for me to say. It is hard to see Herschel Walker winning the Senate seat, barring something very unpredictable. Of course, if you asked me 2 years ago, hey, what are the odds that Georgia sends not one Democrat, but 2 Democrats to the Senate, I would have said you're insane. Unpredictable stuff happened. Democrats stirred up Georgia, won the presidential election by those 11,000 and however many votes, and then come back out in January to that runoff and win both seats with Senator Ossoff and Warnock. I believe that it is extremely difficult to see Senator Warnock losing this race. That being said, it is possible that Herschel Walker wins this race, and if it does, it will be on the back of Republicans gaining support in urban areas that was not likely before. However, they are showing to make gains in those traditionally Democratic areas. And even then, is this a referendum on Trump? I believe it is. It's yet to be seen what the voters think. However, I will be surprised to see Trump come out boldly if he loses this election and say he's running for another election in 2024. That if Herschel Walker wins this election, though, especially if Ron Johnson maintains his seat in Wisconsin, I do think that Trump will come out shortly after the election, emboldened by those victories, and declare his presidential campaign started again. However, as it stands now, I think Raphael Warnock wins this. However, I think it's within 3 points, and I do think that Walker will do his absolute best, and it will stay close. So, once again, thank you. We're leaving Wisconsin as a toss-up. We're in Pennsylvania, Georgia as a Democratic state. We are going to continue this with Arizona next week. Till then, see you next time. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe. Have a good night. Talk to you next time.